Yeah, we're locked down here in the UK, as many people are. Um, what are we learning? I've really just noticed how seamlessly it seems for us. We've transitioned from, typically meeting in homes, what might be smaller groups. Most of our churches, smaller groups of people, just seamlessly transitioned to online. And that's been great. Been really good, actually. Just very simple. Once people have just grappled with the technology, they're off, they're online. The 3/3 groups are running, discovery Bible studies are happening, people are meeting up consistently, regularly in that way. So that's been great. Yeah, really good.
So that's with your sort of gathering as church, you're doing that online. But are they also doing discipleship and church online with others?
Yeah, it's begun to. I've probably set that as a bit of a vision from the beginning, so I did my first online, if you like, official church gathering 2 Sundays ago. We just set a vision there. This is a biblical, healthy church. There's probably only one thing we can't do at the moment, and that's be together with each other, eating meals in each other's homes. Meeting together in that way. Otherwise, we can pretty much carry on doing everything and being that biblical, healthy church. And then could you go and reproduce this? So could you go start a group like that this week somewhere? And so, yeah, we've just begun to see it reproduce. I know of one team are doing that already. We're seeing multiple teams do that across the UK. So it just seems to have happened, quite seamlessly, and that's been great.
So they're just automatically plugging into 3/3 discipleship and what they've learned from Acts 2:36-47 about healthy church,
Yep.
and they're transitioning to doing that online and starting new churches, new groups as a result.
Yeah, and they're finding, if you're using Zoom or a platform like Zoom, I guess you got to be slightly more intentional about how you use your time when you're online with a group of people. So they're finding the 3/3 process just very helpful, really almost coming into its own. But then we're seeing people are noticing the process more clearly. And we've got an old lady on one of our teams just in town here, and she only joined us a few months ago. She'd been part of the Baptist and Anglican church all of her life, and she met us on the streets. We just offered to pray for her and shared the gospel with her. And her story now is that when you guys shared the 3 circles with me that day, that was the day I truly turned and believed on Jesus. I realized, although I'd been a believer in God and a church attender all my life, that was the first time I truly trusted and began to follow Jesus. So she's in one of our teams, and she's grappled with the technology. She's at every church gathering we do now, and she's just loving it. And then she's going away. So she's messaging me yesterday. She said, "Russell, I need to practice the questions for the Discovery Bible Study, but I can't remember what they are. Where are they?" So she's going away and practicing everything so that she can reproduce it with others. And I think she's about 70, just grappling with the technology, but very excited about what God's doing. It's just wonderful. And people doing that everywhere, just all the time.
So how is the gospel getting out in a time like this?
I would describe myself, and therefore many of our teams that I work with, as just being really strong when we're going, as teams 2 by 2 or however many into the harvest. So into new communities, estates, neighborhoods. And I would say that would be one of our strengths. And now I would say for me personally, therefore, my relational network, although I'm sharing the gospel there, I wouldn't say it's been the priority for me. So now I'm in a situation where, like, we can't go 2 by 2 into new neighborhoods. So I'm forced to address that personally. And so, I've just been sitting with my phone on my computer at the beginning of every day, just thinking like, okay, who can I message, Lord? Who should I be talking to? And that's actually been really good. So I've got a friend in London who sends me a text message every day. And the text message, it's a different one every day. And there's a little prayer prompt section. There's a reading section with just like a little passage of scripture or a story of Jesus. And then there's a response section, which has 4 questions in it. What do we learn about God? Is there anything Jesus wants me to do as a result of this? How could I pray for you? And is there anyone you want to pass this on to? And so I've been sending that daily text message to, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 guys I know who are far from God. That's been great. That's been really good.
Why is that? Give us an example of responses you received.
So one of them's my neighbour, lives out the back here, Guy, 40 years old, Alan, lovely guy. He's a carpet fitter, so he's done some of our carpets. He's a good neighbour. I've had some really good conversations with him, but I've not been able up to now to just sit with him and really share the gospel clearly with him and invite him to follow Jesus. But I've been praying for him all of this year, really. And so I just thought, I've got Alan's mobile number, I'm going to send it to him. And I think it was the first or the second day he responds to me, just says, "Oh, thanks for thinking of us, Russ." I found that really challenging. In fact, it really showed me some things about me personally. So I just text back and say, "Oh, thanks for the response. What was God teaching you?" And so he replies back and says, "Well, I don't really want to say what it means for me. It's really hit home personally." So that was like I think the first or the second day, and then I've had a couple of other responses over the week. And then I saw him. I was out painting the fence in the front garden this weekend, and he walked by to go to the shop. So we had a 2-meter distance conversation, and he was like, "Thanks for sending me those messages, Russ. They're great." And he said, like that day, he said, "I've made some changes in my life." He said, "That really hit home." And he said, "I don't want to share with you what those are."
Yeah.
But he said it was really powerful. He said, "They're really encouraging me." So, 40-year-old guy, far from God. I still haven't sat with him and shared the 3 circles with him and invited him to follow Jesus. But now every time I see him, we're having a conversation like that. I'm texting him every day. And then his dad walked by as well that same day at the weekend. And his dad says, "Oh, hi, Russ. How are you doing? Russ, are you a pastor?" So I said, "Well, yeah, I guess I am. But what do you mean by that?" So he's like, some sort of like an equivalent of a vicar. And I said, "No, I used to be, but I'm not anymore. But yeah, I'm a follower of Jesus and I'm caring for my community." He said, "Oh," I thought you were." He said, "Those messages you've been sending my Alan," he said, "he's been telling me about them." And then John
Alan's
and I
passing the messages on.
Yeah, so then John and I have this conversation about Jesus, which leads me to then say, "Well, John, would you like to, when this is all over, we could arrange to meet up and share some more stories of Jesus?" He said, "No," he says, "I'm all right at the moment, Russ. I'm fine. I can do that in my own time." But he said, "Thanks for the offer." He said, "That was great." So, and then I met his mum on one of those days as well. And I don't think I've ever had like more than a hello with his mum. So anyway, we stood 2 meters apart, and she was struggling with some shopping, so I offered to help her with it. She's fine. I'm okay. And we chatted about coronavirus and all that's going on. So then I just said, could I pray for you? And she's like, oh yeah, that'd be great. So we just stood there 2 meters apart, and I'm praying for her in the name of Jesus. And just in a week, I've gone from praying for Alan probably like most days this year, and having not shared the gospel with him, to having what I think's a significant conversation and connection with like 3 members of his family. He lives with his parents are slightly elderly, and Alan lives with them, although he's an older guy, and he sort of looks after them. His dad works with him. Before the lockdown hit, we just printed a little leaflet. Like I think we did 100 or a couple of hundred of them. Just hi everyone, just introducing ourselves. We're probably heading into lockdown. The next few weeks might be difficult. We thought we'd create a WhatsApp group that you can join if you want to. Just message Jan or I, and we'll put you on the WhatsApp group. But if you don't want to be on the group, that's fine. If you need anything, contact Janet or I, and we just gave them our phone numbers and our door number in the street. And Janet and I went and delivered all of them by hand, knocked on every door and just explained what we were doing. And people were like, oh, wow, that's amazing. So one of the things as well we found is just the connection with neighbours at the moment. And I wouldn't describe us as like, great neighbourly types. We're not the people who are out there talking to everybody all the time. In the past, we were busy leading churches and probably hardly interacting with our neighbours at all, sadly to say. And now we're just finding these opportunities. And I know we've got a friend in Manchester, and they've done the same thing. And they then took the next step and invited every neighbour on the WhatsApp group into a Stories of Hope using Discovery Bible Study on one evening last week.
Yeah.
And they were just going to run it and see if anybody turned up. They'd sent the link out on the WhatsApp group, and I think they had 3 of their neighbours rock up into the Zoom room to share a story of hope. And so Nick and Becky just did that one night last week, and I think they're planning to do the same thing again. So we did a little meet-up with our neighbours on Friday evening, just meet the neighbours, names to faces on Zoom, and there were like 3 families. So that was just nice. But we didn't do a Discovery Bible Study or anything. But it was just great to connect with people, and so we're finding that as well. So then we were down. So somebody in town gets it's like a local charity, and they get stuff delivered at the end of the day from a supermarket, and they put it on a table outside the front of their house just for people to go and collect. So I just drove past their house the other day and said hello to them, and they had loads of flowers. So I picked up a bootload of flowers in the car, and I delivered them to a load of our neighbours on the street here. And so one of the ladies just down the road here, again, she's lived here 20 years and we've hardly ever spoken to her. So we knock on her door, deliver the flowers, and she'd been sick the week before. So we're like, are you okay? She's like, I'm doing great, we're fine. And then she tells us about her son's father-in-law who's sick with COVID-19 in hospital. So we're just like, can we pray? She's like, oh, shit, that would be great. She said, we're praying. And we'd love it if you could. So then we just had this opportunity to pray with them as a family. So the other thing we're finding is happening, and again, it's this online thing. So I'm just posting like our church gatherings meeting this Sunday at 10:30, and I'm posting the Zoom link. So if you want to join us. So we found every time we've met now, just as a local team, people are easily inviting their friends into that. So that's a great thing. So we've seen that happen. But then we're finding other leaders joining us from across the world. So like this Sunday morning, we had people from Australia, people from East Africa, and people from Britain in the room.
Doing
So
church.
doing church together, 3 continents.
Wow.
And some of the people who joined us internationally, they were other leaders of other networks who were just like, Russ, do you mind if we join in just to watch how is this being done and how can we better do this? So that was great. So like we had this guy from Perth actually join us with a couple of his mates in his network there. And then we had a follow-up call the next day just to debrief that, to see what they could learn. And then just like, Russ, how do we effectively go and reproduce this? So that's one of the other things we found to be real helpful as well. So just making the connection point for the online gathering, public in some way, in some safe way, and just seeing who joins. So, yeah, that's been great.
With the encouragement that the people that are joining are participating, but they're also starting their own churches online.
Yeah, so it's either a gathering for our local team and our local church, but even they're being encouraged to go and reproduce. Or you can come in, watch how we do this, participate, but we're modeling this for you so that you will go and reproduce this somewhere.
But what are you trusting God for in the midst of this crisis?
Typically, I think I wouldn't cope well with a lockdown. I like to be busy. I'm an activist. I love being with people. So personally, I'm just feeling that sense of, wow, we're having to trust the Lord for the work. Like we're having to trust the disciples to the Lord, to the Spirit, for Him to take them up and use them. We're having to trust the churches to Him. So there's definitely trust, in all of this, and just trusting the Lord with the work. But we're really believing that in this time, God will multiply the work in an increasing measure, and that people will continually find ways to engage people, share the gospel generously everywhere they can, albeit, in a virtual or online sense, in order to multiply disciples and new churches across the world, so, and especially here in the Western world, so that we see a movement of new churches and new disciples multiplying everywhere. That's what we're praying for. We're praying for that every day, that God will move, that God will multiply His work across the earth.